So why are we here? Well, very briefly, in June 2012, there were 18,500 WiBSE members. Of those members, only 990 were female. And of those 990 female members, only 16 were fellows, female fellows. So formally, WiBSE began in September 2012. We are a formal WiBSE network, reporting into the WiBSE Diversity Panel and ultimately reporting into the WiBSE Board. We've now been established for just over 6 months, and within 6 months we have 273 members. We also have 10 volunteers on our steering group. So I'm just going to leave you now with the vision for WiBSE. Our vision is to inspire the next generation and to create a supportive network that will enable more women to join, stay, and progress within our industry. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Beaven to you, who is the Financial Director for Ramboll. Thank you.
I'm a lone accountant here, I think, so I'm not sure if I'm going to inspire the mechanical electrical engineers amongst you, but hopefully I can tell you a tale about how I made my way up to my board position currently. So I'm going to firstly welcome you to Ramboll, and our CEO, MD, is here today for the event. I'm going to give you some facts and figures, just a little bit from research that has been done recently, and then talk about gender representation in Ramboll and some of the statistics that we capture through our holistic reporting that we do as an organisation. Then I'm going to give you a very quick but personal canter through my career. You might not find it very interesting. It was very interesting to me, but there were lots of little challenges along the way. But I feel like, I was talking to Alex, I feel a little bit of a fraud because I don't feel like I've really overcome adversity or had massive obstacles in my way. I have achieved success, but it hasn't felt like a struggle, to be honest. So I will tell you about some of the decisions I made, but they were just part and parcel of everyday life as far as I'm concerned. And then I'll give you some insight into what the Ramboll employees feel about quotas, because there's been some lots of press noise about quotas for women on boards, particularly PLC boards, and mixed views in the media about how that would work and whether that's a good idea. So just based on some research, there is a perception that the glass ceiling still exists, and I can see that Alex has got a little book there that is evidence that clearly someone found it viable enough topic to write a whole book about. 73% of women believe that there is a glass ceiling, so it's quite telling that that's a much more significant proportion than the men. And 47% of women believe that quotas is the way to deal with gender balance in senior positions in organisations. In the survey that was done of 3,000 managers, the overwhelming response about why women don't make it to the top was that it's about lack of confidence and self-doubt. And really, I guess my journey is a demonstration of how confidence makes a difference in how you weave your way up through the career ladder. In that same survey, it looked at aspirations, and actually what's very evident from those that were surveyed is that a higher proportion of men seek promotion. And what's quite telling from the statistics is a higher proportion of women are looking to either downscale their work or go part-time, and most likely because of, balancing up family life. But what's also quite interesting is that quite a few men seem to be thinking about part-time working and downscaling. So maybe that is to do with the generational shift into the new man era, the sort of the context of we're all in it together as a family, and we share the workload with looking after the children. What was quite shocking to me was when I looked at some other statistics and the National Management Survey, in particular showed that in the period from August 11 to August 12, when there were lots of cuts going on in jobs right the way through all of the sectors as we hit the financial crisis, that a bigger proportion of women were suffering at the hands of those job cuts, and particularly in the senior position. So not only did we start from a lower base, but we're now probably in a worse position than we were before, because more of us have faced or fallen foul of those job cuts. So I'm not quite sure why that is. Maybe that's a voluntary thing where women have thought, you know what, I don't need all this stress of balancing work and family. I'll just take this opportunity and go and think about life while I've got a bit of money in my pocket. Who knows? But it's quite interesting. In Ramboll, we have 30% overall in Ramboll Group of female staff, and that's compared to the UK Commission for Employment and Statistics of around 50% gender balance in the workforce. In the UK, it's only 15%, so we lag behind the rest of Ramboll Group. And particularly when it comes to senior staff, because in Ramboll there's about 29% of senior staff are females, but in the UK it's only 4%. And when we look at Ramboll as an organisation, on an average basis compared to the ACE, we've got about 20% of our fee earners as women. So in comparison to the UK, we're not an anomaly, but we are in the context of Ramboll Group. Now, Ramboll Group is a big Nordic organisation, and there are quite a few cultural and legislative differences between the Nordic regions. Some of those have quotas already built into their statute. Others have a culture where it's much more about parental support and sharing. So Ramboll is a very good example in the group context of how to get that balance right. And when we look across Ramboll, we can see that actually in parts of Ramboll, there's quite a high percentage of female employees. And the green bars, quite a high percentage of females in senior positions. Not at the quota levels that have been discussed for the legislation at the moment, but the UK is desperately behind. Now, I think that's an indication of the fact that the UK construction industry is really poor in terms of gender representation, and that's more an indication not of Ramboll, but of the UK construction industry as a whole. So how did I get to my board position? I'm CFO, and I sit on the UK board, on the executive board, and on the management group at Ramboll. And that involves getting, not just dealing with finances, but strategic planning, business planning, thinking about people issues, thinking about goals and aspirations and markets, and really a much broader context than finance. And it is a pretty stressful job, but it's what I wanted to do, and it's where I set my aspirations. But I got to where I wanted to get to through really initially setting myself some goals, finding my way around barriers, being prepared to change my route as my life changed, and I'll give you some examples of that in a moment, but staying focused on what I wanted to achieve, but essentially believing I'm as good as any man, and sometimes quite a bit better, but we won't name names. So my two career goals, to be a finance director and to be a fellow by the age of 30, and I achieved both of those. But I had to weave myself up from being a trainee accountant at the age of 19 to getting to those goals. So I went through several paths. I was a trainee management accountant with British Gas. I wasn't a graduate. I went straight from college into a trainee scheme. It was a scheme for graduates, but I blagged my way onto it, and I did 5 years and qualified as an accountant with British Gas. They provided me with study support and training and all of the things that I needed to get qualified. And I thanked them by leaving as soon as I got qualified and moving to the much more glamorous life in television. And I worked for what's now Meridian, but was TVS at the time. And I used to bump into celebrities like Bobby Davro and Samantha Fox, who did summertime specials. They were daily occurrences. But life was very different then. It was just at the time when sexual harassment legislation was coming out and people were being told that's not appropriate. But I can tell you, in that environment, there was a casting couch, and I was invited to sit on it or lay on it a number of times. But you wouldn't get that nowadays. Things have changed significantly, and I think that's a very positive move. I left the TV industry to move to the bright lights of London, and I got attracted to work for a management consultancy as an international accountant. So I was traveling around the world, enjoying myself, working with some absolutely fantastic, inspirational people, the top MBA graduates, and I was working with people who had come from Harvard. I was nowhere near in their league, but I still aspired to be as good as them. However, I got sort of headhunted back into television, into the dizzy heights of dealing with merchandising rights for Paddington Bear and Wombles, and trying to regenerate an animation company as part of Central TV that was going through its renewal of its franchise, and it wanted to turn a loss-making company back into a profit-making company to help it with its franchise win. So I had some great fun with Paddington Bear and the Wombles and Huxley Pig, and this isn't first time round, by the way, because I'm not that old. This is the second time round where we're trying to rejuvenate the royalties and merchandising. And I worked for a real pig of a boss there. He got an MBE for all his work in children's television, but he was obnoxious. He would bang the table. He would shout at people when he had a sandwich in his mouth, and you'd get sprayed with sandwich. It was not the most pleasant of experiences, but that wasn't a sexist thing. That was what he was like with everybody, and you just had to learn to sort of work with him. But about that time, my biological clock was ticking away a bit, and I thought, it's about time I had a family. I can't imagine doing this in this environment. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to be my own boss. I can bring up the kids and have my own business and be everything. And I had a go at doing that, and I was very successful. But as I got more and more successful, I didn't just have one boss. I had about 20 bosses who would ring me on a Saturday or a Sunday or in the evening. During this time, the family didn't arrive, and I was thinking to myself, I'm never going to be able to juggle having a family and running my own business and having all these people who all want a slice of me at the same time. So I decided at 30 I'd get back into industry. I'd make the most of having maternity benefits if the kids I wanted came along, and I would get myself back into a more comfortable position where I only had one boss to answer to. So at this point I moved into my first finance director role. I was 30, hey-ho. I'd hit my goal, and I got my fellowship as well. And that was a company called Spider Networks. But sod's law, 6 weeks after joining, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. And my most immediate thought was, oh my God, what am I going to tell them? I've only been here 6 weeks. I found out I'm pregnant. They'll want to get rid of me. They're going to think, you know, they've employed a finance director who's really not going to be here for the duration. So I made all sorts of promises about working right up to the last minute, not taking any maternity leave, all these promises, and they soaked it all in. They didn't say, of course you don't need to do this. So I literally worked up to about an hour before I was induced. Absolute madness, complete madness, and I look back and I think, what was I thinking? And then within a few weeks, I was back at work. They were lovely. They let me take my daughter Jessica into work with me, and she was sat on my shoulder a lot of the time, or she was passed around people in the team. And for about a month I juggled this. At no point did they say, this is ridiculous, go home, you're all right, we don't need you here. So this pace continued, and then I decided actually she needed to go to nursery. This wasn't really a very viable solution for the longer term. So I shipped her off to nursery, which was at Broadmoor Hospital, which was a scary thought in itself. Lots of security. But what a traumatic time. Those of you that have had babies and put them into nursery, the first few weeks, awful, so emotional. I spent every lunchtime going down looking at her. She was fast asleep, and I'd want her to wake up, and she didn't. But anyway, I got over that period, another 2 years, and then my second child was a bump in my belly. And I was thinking, oh God, you know, this is going to start to get quite difficult. But at this time, we were negotiating the sale of the business, and we were talking to a big American company, and the board was saying, we really need you on board. We need to get the best value out of this business, so we need you here. So I was working like a Trojan, trying to make sure that we got the best value, having meetings with this American vice president, and not feeling very favorably about the sorts of culture that this organisation was introducing. And we went through a number of integration meetings, and this is when I discovered that the woman that I would be working for, the female vice president of Shriver Organisation America, was a bitch. And I thought, oh, I cannot work for him. I went to integration meetings where I was 8 months pregnant, and she had us working from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. I had a 2-year-old at home. She made no allowances for me. She was driving me hard, and I thought, I don't want to work for this cow. So I negotiated my way out and decided for a year or two to work for myself again, pick up some contacts, do some contract work. And that's what I did, very successfully, but it really wasn't where I saw my future. So I then moved back into industry when I was 34, into a media company, working for a PLC that was getting ready to privatise so that the chairman could secure his exit route for retirement. All well and good, but not really a longer-term future. And during this time, balancing up all of those pressures, I moved to an au pair, and I have stories galore about what it's like having an au pair living with you and the sorts of concoctions they will cook for your food. But a wonderful experience for my kids and for me, some good and some bad. But that enabled me to balance my work life and my home life and really sort of take some of the pressure off. I'm now CFO for Ramboll, previously Gifford. I joined the business as the first female director, the first non-engineer as a director. I was paid more than anybody else when I came on board. I didn't know anything about engineering, and I hadn't worked in a partnership. Now, the reason I got the job was because we had a fantastic MD called Jeff Clifton, who actually sponsored me. He could see all of the different aspects I could bring and something new to the organisation. And he's the reason that I did so well, really. He really sponsored me. He changed the way that others thought. Some of the traditional partners were a bit dodgy at times. We had wandering eye trouble when we were having conversations, a lot of looking here instead of here. But things started to change. Some of those old guys retired, and life was completely different. And this year I'm 50, and I'm still here. So it's been a great place to work, but it's been a very male-dominated world. As I started, there were more females. And as I've got closer to the top, I've seen female colleagues disappear. I'm going to have to race through now. What gives people confidence? It's not about having a role model that's a woman. It's having a good role model, and Jeff Clifton was mine. It helps if you can see someone who's reached the top that is a woman and has managed to stay there, because you can see that it's possible. Ramboll certainly needs to demonstrate more support to its females to get to the top, and I know it's on our diversity agenda, because we do aspire to have more at the top. I'd like to have more women around the table. It's not, it's lonely sometimes. So just to finish off with the survey, is gender balance important? I think it is, because you need proper representation. You need to be able to have a different perspective and to show that equal opportunities are a reality. I did a survey of whether the Ramboll staff thought quotas were a good idea. 67% said no, but this is a male-dominated environment, so I split it down by gender. And hey-ho, 77% of men said no, but it was equally balanced with women. And generally, the no for the quotas were the same sort of comments around it being devaluing your role if you've got there only because you were a part of a quota, and that it's discrimination, and any form of discrimination is actually not good, and you should get there on merit. But if people can't get there on merit and we can't make some differences, sometimes legislation is the only way to change. But I would say of the women that responded positively to quotas, the majority said only voluntary. We don't think legislation is the way to do it. So my advice, it's about knowing what you want and believing in your ability to do it. It's not necessarily about someone saying, there's a quota there for you. Because if you can demonstrate you've got the confidence and you believe you're as good as any man, and I think every woman here probably does and is, then others will see your confidence and believe in you, because that's what Jeff Clifton saw in me. And that's why I'm here today. You've got to do what's right for you. I changed my path a number of times. I made some difficult decisions. Some of them worked out better than others, but you know, life throws at you difficult challenges and you have to find your way through those. But don't feel like you have to act like a man to be taken seriously, because gender balance doesn't work if we all strut around and all talk like that. You know, we have to be women to actually give proper representation. And there is no shame in using, for the women here, your femininity. It's what makes us women. If it gets you through a door and then you can show someone how good you are, use it. I don't see any shame in it. I've never had a problem using it. So that's me done.